This is part 2 of the source integration lecture. And I really just want to make sure that you understand how you can take some of the sample essays and look closely at the paragraphs and the structure of the paragraphs and ask yourself in each sentence, what is this sentence doing and how do I do that? So if I were to take this paragraph, for example, I would look at it and see that it starts with the topic. The topic is personality and careers. So the very first sentence is broad. That is a good thing. You want your main idea sentence to be broad. And then you want to move on to more specific as you get into examples, illustrations, and details to support that topic. So it moves from the broader idea of personalities and careers in general to the more specific career of computer scientist. And then it gives evidence from a source, and the red part is where the source is introduced, so the reader knows who this writer is about to quote and why we should believe that person is an expert. Well, that person works as a senior database engineer. And then we have some more writing from the student in the black writing there before the direct quotation. This is called embedding your quotation. So instead of using a signal phrase like Jones says, comma, and then giving the quotation, which would be fine to do structurally if you had enough information before the quotation, that is perfectly acceptable and even good if there is enough information. But this student chose to embed the quotation so that it comes more organically through his or her own voice as a writer, as a student writer for this essay. So feel free to embed with your own words and then just using snippets from what the writer has said or the expert has said. And then you can put some more of your own words around what you're quoting to make it more your own idea that comes through more vividly. So that's really important when you are writing to make sure that your ideas are the star of the show and that you're not just stringing together a whole bunch of quotes from experts where your ideas and your voice is kind of lost among just sort of a collection of expert voices. So for this paragraph, the student's writing is everything that is not written in black. So that's a lot of writing. Make sure that you are doing most of the writing. Your voice is the loudest in each of your paragraphs in your whole essay. Also, read the sentences that contain the quotations aloud. And if it doesn't sound like a sentence you would say in a presentation, then don't write that sentence. It needs more work. So if it sounds like a fragment or a run-on sentence, make sure that you revise that so it sounds like one complete sentence with the introduction of the source and the quotation included together. And here is a template that I made from this paragraph. Feel free to stop and write down the templates, write notes well in your notebook so that you can refer to those when you are taking quizzes or writing your essays. Using the same structure as the paragraphs that you are given as samples is a good thing. Use that structure. Using the same formula is not plagiarism because you are putting your own ideas in there. You're not copying someone else's ideas. Here's another sample paragraph that may look more like what you are working toward for your essay because you are using the Occupational Outlook Handbook as a source. So this paragraph starts with a main idea sentence that also serves as a transition. Transitions are important at the beginnings of paragraphs because you want to smoothly lead your reader from the topic you just discussed to the topic you will discuss in the upcoming paragraph. So this paragraph starts with a transition by mentioning the career that was discussed in the paragraph before, and also touching on what is coming up in this paragraph, the new topic. So we have a good transition, and then the red part is the introduction of the source. So if you use the Occupational Outlook Handbook as your source, make sure that it is italicized when you're talking about the website. The website itself is the bigger thing. It's called the container because it contains all these different articles on different careers. And you can see the article is what is used in the parenthetical citation here. Notice that in the parenthetical citation, you will put the article title in quotation marks, even though it is in parentheses. So don't let the extra punctuation scare you or make you leave off an important part of the punctuation for the title. Also, titles should have capital letters. All significant parts of a title should be capitalized. Any meaningful word and the first and last word, even if the first and last words are small words like articles or prepositions, for example. Make sure that you quote directly from your sources. You can use brief quotes, or you can quote an entire sentence. Just make sure that when you incorporate the quotations that they make sense as a complete sentence when you are reading them aloud. Then here is a transition word, clearly, that tells the reader, okay, I'm going to reiterate or react to what I've just quoted. You should do that. That is the green part here. And then the last three sentences, answer the question, so what? That's important to do in each paragraph. And the so what is explaining how this quotation that you have just given as evidence relates to the topic sentence of the paragraph and to the thesis statement, that argument. A thesis statement is an argument, a proposal that you are saying this is a thing that's important. How does the quotation help show that what you are proposing is important? So use 2 or 3 sentences at the end, at least one great sentence, even better if you work in 2 or 3 sentences to really fully explain the small illustration or idea that you have quoted. Here is what it would look like if I took the quotation or the paragraph that I just showed you and made it into a template. So when I am looking at a paragraph, I'm thinking, what is each sentence doing? So pause and consider that. Just pause the video and watch and consider, what is each sentence doing? That's exactly what I did. And I came up with this. This is what each sentence was doing. And it's color-coded, so you can go back and forth and see which part goes with which aspect of the paragraph. Here's another paragraph that goes with the samples of the argumentation essay. So it's the same basic principle. And you can pause this and take a look. See how much of the writing is the student's own writing. Remember, the black part is the only thing that's being quoted. So you see that there's a main idea sentence, very short, very broad, and then a source is introduced. That's the red part. Then the quotation quoted directly from the source is in black. The parenthetical citation is in yellow. The green is the in other words part, the reiteration of the quote. So explain what that quote means in your own words. And then the last section of the paragraph, the most important part really, is you interacting with that idea that you just quoted. How is that idea important? How does it support the argument you're making in your essay, which is your thesis? Your thesis is your argument. Sometimes we do longer quotations. If you quote something that is more than 3 lines long, you will want to look at doing a blocked quotation. Sometimes people, you can get away with quoting 4 lines, but if it's more than 4 lines, for sure you want to do a blocked quotation. If you're quoting poetry or song lyrics, for example, anything more than 3 lines, you have to do it as a blocked quotation. And a blocked quotation looks like this. You just move it over an inch. Notice there are no quotation marks. The blocking itself shows that this is something being quoted. Also, here's a little crazy rule. If you do a block quotation and there are no quotation marks, leave the period with the quotation, and then your page number that's in the parenthetical citation just goes at the end without a period after it. And here's kind of what it looks like in a paper. Here's another sort of issue that comes up. What if you're quoting someone and they have quoted someone else? Well, when you have a quote in the thing you are quoting, it's called a quote within a quote. So when you see the thing you're quoting has quotation marks, but you are quoting more words around that, you start your quotation with quotation marks, just the standard quotation marks, and change what was in the quotation from double quotation marks to single, or standard quotation marks to single. And then you do the same parenthetical citation that would show up on your works cited. So if Mitchell is the author of the thing that you're quoting, and that's what's in your works cited, you would put Mitchell's name there and the page number. You wouldn't suddenly put this author, but you can quote it like that in there. And here are some more options for that same quote. Feel free to pause and take a look at this. You can, instead of putting Mitchell in the parenthetical citation, you can put Mitchell's name, the author of the source you found, put that person's name before you, or as you introduce the quotation. And then the citation verb here is notes. And then just give the regular quotation, starting with standard quotation marks. And then where it starts quoting the other author, you change those to single, and then end with standard quotation marks. This one's incorrect here. Let's look at why. So the rule is, if you have a quote within a quote, but the only part you're quoting is actually from the stuff that's already in quotation marks, you don't need 3 quotation marks and then end with 3 quotation marks. So just put standard quotation marks here. If you were quoting something and the quotation started maybe back here, and then you had part that was the quote within a quote, it would be a little bit different. So don't hesitate to ask for help from me or from a classmate or the tutors with the quote within a quote thing. Get that checked out. Here's another way that is correct for using a quote within a quote. So you could just give credit to the person being quoted in the article for the idea, and then you say quoted in, and then your source is still here. So that makes that clear to the reader that you have not just not cited a source, because if you put lips in here and you didn't have that in your works cited, it would be very confusing for your reader. And let me just remind you about some mistakes that happen, and this is what we're trying to avoid. You want to make sure that you introduce the title of the work and the author that you're quoting Make sure you always introduce a source. Don't start a sentence or a paragraph with a quote, and don't end a paragraph with a quote either.